Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-dive into a seismic shift in international politics that has sent shockwaves across Europe and beyond. The United States has reportedly declared that achieving peace in Ukraine and normalizing relations with Russia is now a core priority. This is a massive development, one that could redefine the global landscape as we know it. For the past couple of years, the narrative has been one of unwavering support for Ukraine and isolating Russia. So, what's behind this sudden, dramatic pivot? Let's break it down. First, let's understand the context. Since February 2022, the Western world, led by the United States, has been united in its condemnation of Russia's actions in Ukraine. We've seen unprecedented sanctions, massive military and financial aid packages for Kyiv, and a diplomatic deep freeze with Moscow. The official stance has consistently been that Ukraine must win, and Russia must be held accountable. This new declaration, if reports are accurate, represents a complete 180-degree turn from that established policy. The European Union, in particular, which has borne much of the economic and social cost of the conflict, is said to be in a state of shock and confusion. They've aligned their entire foreign policy with Washington's lead, and now it seems the rug is being pulled out from under them. So, the big question is, why now? Several factors could be at play here. The first, and perhaps most significant, is the sheer cost of the conflict. The financial and military resources poured into Ukraine have been staggering. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. At a time when the U.S. is facing its own domestic economic challenges, from inflation to national debt, the sustainability of this open-ended support is coming under intense scrutiny. There is a growing sentiment among some American policymakers and the public that these resources could be better used at home. This isn't just about money. It's about military readiness. The constant flow of advanced weaponry and ammunition to Ukraine has depleted American and NATO stockpiles, raising concerns about their ability to respond to other potential crises around the world. A second major factor is the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Foreign policy always plays a role in American elections, and the Ukraine war is a particularly divisive issue. One side argues for a continued, robust support as a defense of democratic values. The other side argues for a more America-first approach, prioritizing domestic issues and avoiding foreign entanglements. A pivot towards peace could be a strategic move to appeal to a broad swath of voters who are weary of the conflict and its associated costs. A candidate promising to end the war and bring stability could have a powerful message. Regardless of their party affiliation, this potential policy shift could be a way to test the waters, to see how the public and the international community react to the idea of a negotiated settlement. Third, we have to consider the situation on the ground in Ukraine. After more than 2 years of brutal fighting, the conflict is settled into a grinding war of attrition. While Ukrainian forces have shown incredible bravery and resilience, the reality is that the front lines have moved very little in recent months. A stalemate seems to be setting in, and with it, the grim realization that a decisive military victory for either side might be impossible without a much larger, more direct intervention, which nobody wants. In this context, the idea of a diplomatic solution, once seen as a sign of weakness, is starting to look like a pragmatic necessity. The human cost is immense, with hundreds of thousands of casualties, and the physical destruction is catastrophic. Continuing the war indefinitely might only lead to more suffering with no clear strategic gain. Now, let's look at this from the European perspective. Why the shock? European nations, especially those in Eastern Europe, have seen Russia's actions as a direct existential threat. They have made huge sacrifices to support Ukraine, including weaning themselves off Russian energy at a massive economic cost. They've welcomed millions of refugees and been on the front line of the diplomatic and economic war against Moscow. The idea that the U.S., their primary security guarantor, might unilaterally seek a deal with Russia is deeply alarming for them. It raises fears of being left behind, of a new Yalta-style agreement where major powers decide the fate of smaller nations over their heads. This move could create deep fissures within NATO and the EU, as different countries scramble to reassess their own national security strategies. Countries like Poland and the Baltic states might feel betrayed, while others like Hungary, who have long called for peace, might feel vindicated. The term normalizing relations with Russia is also incredibly loaded. What would that even look like? For years, The policy has been to treat Russia as a pariah state. A return to normal diplomatic and economic ties would be a bitter pill to swallow for many, especially Ukraine. It would raise questions about accountability for war crimes, the future of sanctioned individuals and entities, and the status of Ukrainian territories currently under Russian control. Would a peace deal legitimize Russia's territorial gains? Would sanctions be lifted? These are the thorny, complex issues that would have to be addressed, and finding a consensus will be monumentally difficult. Any perceived concessions to Russia would be seen by many as a betrayal of the principles the West has claimed to be defending. Furthermore, there's the China factor. The United States' long-term strategic priority is its competition with China. The protracted war in Ukraine is, in many ways, a distraction and a drain on resources that could otherwise be focused on the Indo-Pacific. A stable, or at least predictable, situation in Europe would allow the U.S. to shift its full attention and resources to what it sees as the primary challenge of the 21st century. Ending the conflict with Russia, even on less than ideal terms, might be seen in some Washington circles as a necessary strategic trade-off to better position the U.S. for its rivalry with Beijing. This is a classic example of great power politics, where regional conflicts are often viewed through the prism of a larger global chessboard. So, what happens next? This is the billion-dollar question. If these reports are true, we are likely to see a flurry of intense, behind-the-scenes diplomatic activity. We can expect high-level talks between Washington, Moscow, and key European capitals. Ukraine will, of course, be at the center of these discussions, but there is a real danger they could be pressured into accepting a deal that falls short of their goals of liberating all their territory. The reaction from Kyiv will be crucial. President Zelensky has repeatedly stated that there can be no negotiations with Russia until all its troops leave Ukrainian soil. Any deviation from this stance would be politically explosive within Ukraine. We could also see a significant realignment within Europe. If the EU feels it can no longer unconditionally rely on the US, it may push for greater strategic autonomy, accelerating efforts to build up its own collective defense capabilities, independent of NATO. This has been a topic of discussion in Europe for years, but a shift in US policy could provide the ultimate impetus to turn those discussions into concrete action. This could lead to a stronger, more integrated Europe, but it could also lead to more division if member states cannot agree on a unified path forward. In conclusion, this potential shift in US policy is it's driven by a complex mix of economic realities, domestic political calculations, the military stalemate on the ground, and a broader strategic focus on China. While the prospect of peace is something everyone hopes for, the path to getting there is fraught with peril. For the European Union, this is a moment of truth, a stark reminder that the world order is shifting. For Ukraine, it's a moment of profound uncertainty and potential danger. And for the world, it signals that we may be entering a new phase of this conflict, one where diplomacy, however difficult, may finally take center stage. What do you think about this? Is this a pragmatic move towards peace or a betrayal of principles? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our future updates. See you in the next video.